Today, the term conquistador is synonymous with the cruelty and atrocities committed by the Spanish colonial powers in America. Yet at the time, they were viewed as swashbuckling heroes, adventuring into the unknown to discover untold riches. The real conquistadors were probably somewhere in between these two contrasting viewpoints. In this video, we'll take a closer look at some of the men whose lust for adventure, power, and riches took them into uncharted territory. The term conquistador translates to one who conquers and is almost exclusively used to describe the Spanish leaders and explorers who extended Spanish rule into the Americas. These men were usually ex-soldiers who had little chance of advancement in their native Spain due to their social position. Inspired by tales of a new world, they sought fame and riches beyond what they would be able to achieve at home. As expeditions across the Atlantic were perilous, not to mention the dangers and diseases that awaited on the other side, the Spanish crown was all too happy to accept volunteers who could help them expand its empire. It wasn't just riches that the conquistadors desired. Many of the adventurers were gripped by religious fervor and were determined to spread Christianity to these new lands. Some had been involved in the Reconquista, a Christian war against Muslim kingdoms in the Iberian Peninsula, and Spain was in the grips of the Spanish Inquisition. Given this backdrop, many of the conquistadors justified their brutal actions with religious conviction. One of the first men to receive this title was Hernán Cortés. Cortés was born in 1485 in Medellin, Spain, to a family of minor nobility that reputedly had little wealth but much honor, according to Cortés's secretary. He grew bored with Spanish provincial life. Growing up, he was inspired by tales of Columbus's adventures and the exciting stories about the exotic land that had been previously unknown to the Western world. At the age of 19, he sailed to Hispaniola to seek new horizons. First, he spent around 7 years in Hispaniola, establishing himself and working as a farmer and notary. In 1511, Cortés joined Diego Velázquez and they sailed to Cuba. Velázquez had sailed to Hispaniola with Columbus in 1493, and his tenure earned him the title of governor of the new Cuban colonies. Velázquez appointed Cortés as clerk to the treasurer, and he was given lands and enslaved natives for his participation. By 1517, another hopeful conquistador and slave hunter, Francisco Hernández de Córdoba, had discovered the east coast of Yucatan. The following year, Juan de Grijalva took the same route with the purpose of establishing a colony on the mainland. Cortés had made such a good impression on Velázquez that he was appointed captain general of a new expedition that would provide aid to Grijalva. Cortés's competency in amassing men and ships for the mission aroused the jealousy of Velázquez, who decided to look for an alternative leader. Unperturbed and desperate for adventure, Cortés continued amassing boats and men and sailed to the coast of Yucatan early in 1519 with 11 ships, over 500 soldiers, and 16 horses. Upon landing, he won over the locals, gaining valuable information and help. Next, he sailed to a new landing spot where he founded the settlement of Veracruz, having his men elect him as captain general in order to shake off the authority of Velázquez and establish his own control. Cortés was so determined to survive by conquering the region that he sank his own ships before leading his well-trained troops inland. Trying to keep conflict with the native people to a minimum, he capitalized on the political unrest caused by a local resentment of the Aztec Empire. His connection with the local people and subsequent understanding of the situation earned him over 200,000 native allies, to whom he alluded that he would deliver them from Aztec subjugation. Of course, he failed to mention that he planned to replace the Aztec regime with his own. By 1521, Cortés had defeated the Aztec Empire, becoming the absolute ruler of a territory that extended from the Caribbean to the Pacific. Although Cortés was in a position to establish Mexico as an independent kingdom, he wrote several letters to Spanish King Charles V, reassuring him that the lands had been conquered in the name of the Spanish crown. Cortés seemed to have a love for adventure rather than power, and in 1524, he embarked on a disastrous mission south through the jungles of Honduras. With his health and reputation damaged, he returned to Spain in 1528, but did not receive the hero's welcome he expected. In 1530, he returned to New Spain to find the country in anarchy and accusations levied against him, including that he had killed his wife. He died in 1547 in Spain, as he put it, old, poor, and in debt. As for Velázquez, after brutally exacting Spanish rule in Cuba and losing a considerable portion of his army to Cortés, whom he was trying to bring back under his authority, he was told to ignore the insubordination of Cortés and was removed from office in 1521. Although he regained his governorship in 1523, when Cortés fell out of favor, he died of ill health a year later. Another notable conquistador was Francisco Pizarro. Pizarro was the illegitimate son of Captain Gonzalo Pizarro and a young peasant girl called Francisca Gonzalez. He was also a distant relative of Hernán Cortés. Pizarro was around 27 when he sailed to Hispaniola in 1502. By 1510, he had joined fellow conquistador and explorer Alonso de Ojeda on an expedition to Uraba in Colombia. He clearly made a favorable impression, as 3 years later he was acting as captain on Vasco Núñez de Balboa's famous expedition during which they sighted the Pacific. Pizarro was then made the mayor and magistrate of the town of Panama. Balboa had made a name for himself as a particularly brutal slave hunter, using torture and force to extract information from local tribes. He practiced divide-and-conquer tactics and did all he could to split any allied native people and turn tribes against each other. Balboa often used war dogs to hunt down native people and even performed executions, letting the dogs tear their victims to pieces. Balboa was on the verge of being ousted from his position due to charges levied against him, but the announcement that he had discovered the South Sea restored him to favor. He managed to explore the Gulf of San Miguel in 1517 by transporting a fleet of ships in pieces across the mountains and assembling them on the Pacific shore. His downfall came due to a rivalry with an elderly nobleman, Pedro Arias de Villa, which led to his arrest. He was tried for rebellion, high treason, and mistreatment of the natives before being beheaded in January 1519. During this time, Pizarro had been amassing wealth thanks to his position in Panama. At the age of 48, perhaps inspired by the stories of his younger second cousin, Pizarro decided to embark on another adventure. In 1523, he began a voyage of conquest and discovery along the west coast of South America. The expedition was treacherous, and they got as far as Ecuador before Pizarro's friend and fellow conquistador, Diego de Almagro, was sent back to Panama to get reinforcements. However, the new governor of Panama refused to send any more men on what he saw as a fruitless mission and insisted that the expedition be abandoned. According to legend, upon hearing the news, Pizarro drew a line in the sand and invited any men who desired glory and wealth to cross it and continue their adventure. Those who crossed the line continued on to discover artifacts and accounts of the Inca Empire. It was decided that Pizarro should go back to Spain and ask the king for permission to conquer the new territory that they had named Peru. Permission was granted, and in 1530, Pizarro, along with his 4 brothers, 180 men, and 37 horses, set out to take Peru. Once they had made contact with the Inca, they arranged a meeting. Pizarro's small force lay in ambush, waiting for the Inca ruler, Atahualpa. Once Atahualpa arrived with his men, Pizarro sent out a priest who tried to convince the Inca to convert to Christianity. Predictably, they did not, and their supposed disrespect for the Bible caused Pizarro and his men to attack, cutting down the surprised Inca forces and taking Atahualpa hostage. It was likely the plan was to ambush the Inca all along, though. Pizarro and his men held Atahualpa hostage in Cajamarca until he was of no more use to them. He was given the choice of being burned at the stake as a heretic or strangled as a converted Christian. Atahualpa chose strangulation and converted to Christianity. His death marked the end of the Inca Empire, and Pizarro was able to capture the royal capital of Cusco without force. The Spanish then installed Manco Capac II as a puppet ruler for the Spanish. Soon, arguments about power and riches came between Pizarro and his friend and ally Almagro. At one point, Almagro seized Cusco but was persuaded to seek his fortune in Chile, which had been given to him by the king. However, the poverty he found there disappointed him, and he returned to Cusco, where he was taken prisoner and later executed by one of Pizarro's brothers in 1538. Pizarro died in 1541 when a force led by Almagro's son attacked Pizarro's palace in Lima. Other notable conquistadors include Juan Ponce de Leon, who, according to legends, searched for the Fountain of Youth. De Leon was born to a noble family sometime around 1460, though new evidence shows it might have been closer to 1474. Although little is known about his early life, By 1502, he was in the West Indies serving under the governor of Hispaniola, Nicolas de Ovando. Leon was made governor of the eastern part of Hispaniola after helping suppress a native uprising. After exploring and settling the island of Puerto Rico from 1508 to 1509, he was encouraged by the Spanish crown to search for new lands. According to folklore, Leon learned about a miraculous spring that could restore a person's youth from the natives, and he decided to search for the fabled spring, which was said to be located on Bimini Island. In April 1513, he landed on the coast of Florida, thinking he was on another island and not realizing he had reached the mainland of North America. Because he discovered the region at Easter, Pascua, Florida in Spanish, he named the area Florida. In 1514, he was given the title of military governor for Bimini and Florida and granted permission to colonize the regions. He was wounded by an arrow during a native attack while sailing in Florida in 1521 and later died in Cuba. The conquistadors were often ambitious men endorsed by the Spanish crown to acquire land and riches. While the crown did benefit from their conquests, it also distanced itself from the brutal methods and mistreatment of natives, focusing instead on the expansion of the empire. How would you like to get a deeper understanding of history, impress your friends, and predict the future more accurately based on past events? If this sounds like something you might be into, then check out the brand new Captivating History Book Club by clicking the first link in the description. To learn more about the conquistadors, check out our book, The Conquistadors, a captivating guide to the Spanish explorers, conquest of the Americas, cultural exchange, and legacy. It's available as an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. Also, grab your free Mythology Bundle ebook while it's still available. All links are in the description. If you found the video captivating, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.